lines, Johnny. Hello, my name is John Schaefer, and welcome to the Ministry of Sailing's module on leadership, which describes how safety and teamwork are very important in the midst of a crisis. Today's learning objectives are going to be as follows. Our learning objectives are going to include, how and why leaders must priority safety, how to create and manage a team, the difference between a crew overboard drill based on boat handling maneuverability and the actual recovery of a person or a simulated person when they're overboard, based under a person that can help themselves or a person who does not have the ability to help themselves. Another learning objective is going to be how team dissension in the midst of a crisis can be very hazardous. And then finally, the importance of crew readiness and how to develop crew readiness aboard a vessel. How do your leaders on your vessel prioritize safety? It's a really good question, and it's a good question for you to ask. And I think it's really important that we go back maybe 30, 40, 50 years and take a look at some of the military models that we have when it comes to safety. First of all, in every single aircraft carrier that exists inside the United States Navy, any person at any time can stop all flight operations if they see a safety incident or a safety violation. They can call stop, and everything stops until they make the adjustment so they have a safe deck. The term is the 7 Ps. The 7 Ps consist of prior planning prevents predictability, poor performance. That's right. Prior planning prevents predictability, poor performance. A lot of your briefings that you're going to be hearing on many different vessels are going to start with if there is a person overboard, or what we like to call crew overboard, because that's the U.S. sailing standard. So crew overboard or COB incidents, if a briefing starts with an if, it might show you some of the leadership characteristics that your team might have, as opposed to using the military as an example, who trains to the most elite type of standards that there might be. So before they go to a mission, they don't say, if we have contact, we're going to do this, this, and this. They say, when. So training has to come into the effect from leadership standpoint that says when the incident happens, and you train for the when, you don't train for the if. And there's many ways you can do this. On a vessel, you really want to understand that there's a person who is assigned to safety. That might be the captain, that might be designated to somebody else, but a single individual has to be the safety officer. They should have written procedures, diagrams, labels, infographics. They should have functional equipment and personal protection equipment that go with that. They should have a phased plan when it comes to training. Starts on the deck, goes from the dock, have some reading literature, then it moves to what we call simulated exercise. There should be a phased approach to the training in all the safety. The simulation should also include cross-training. From one position to the next position, people need to be cross-trained so they know everybody's position on the boat, specifically in the event of a crisis. After each training exercise, there should be an after-action review. What went well? What didn't go well? What needs improvement? And what are the learning objectives that we're looking for the next time? But most importantly, your clubs need to emphasize this type of behavior on your boats. The club has to have a vested interest when it comes to the safety of the people that they're sponsoring when they're sailing. For instance, how many times have we all been on the water? How many times is there a delay? How many times do we sit there and do nothing? That is a good opportunity to put a game together, to do a crew overboard, change the mission and from racing into safety. Who can do the fastest simulation of a person overboard and bringing them over, or a crew overboard, as U.S. Sailing says? Who can do this the fastest? Use those dead times and waiting for wind in order to increase the whole club's performance when it comes to crew overboard situations. My team, we have this thing called the rules of racing. We have 4 rules of racing on board Velocity. Number one, we want to keep people in the boat. Number two, you want to keep the water out of the boat. Rule number three, don't hit anybody. Rule number four, look good doing it. Rule number one, keep people in the boat. We really need to provide a safe and secure environment where we treat everybody with dignity, with respect. We create an environment and power where we allow people to make mistakes without negative feedback coming at them in voices of which could be detrimental to their dignity and also that empowers them. We want people to talk. We don't want people to shut down, lose their eyes, lose their ears of things that might enable the team later. We want people to grow emotionally, spiritually, and morally in a way that gives purpose to their lives. You want people to be on your boat, and you want them to be on your boat for the right reasons. You know, the days of putting somebody on a boat and putting up with a tyrant just to get out racing or just to go out sailing, you know, those days are over. And personally, I had to go through a lot of training to erase those behaviors in my life to make a boat which is inclusive that people want to sail on. So it can happen. People can change. But rule number one is keep people on your boat. And leaders have the ability to do this. Rule number two, keep water out of the boat. You know, safety has to be the priority of every single team. And it doesn't happen without intentional effort. You have to be intentional about putting safety together, having the diagrams ready, the infographics ready, even YouTube videos. There are many teams that have a YouTube safety video that walk the entire team through the boat so they know where all the safety equipment is. This is really important. You know, and then understand that teammates have very different styles of learning. And so your styles of briefing have to hit the 3 different styles of learning that there are when you're dealing with giving information on safety and training. You know, briefing placards are really important. It's going to be really important for people to deal with that. Have a scripted brief, just like the airplane. Every time you get on an airplane, somebody gives you a scripted brief, so it's exactly the same every single time. And then demonstrations. It's really important that each crew member should be able to, at a moment's notice, give the safety briefing. That's going to be a really important task because that way they have to understand all the safety equipment that you have in the boat. And you can just take turns and rotate, and then you can coach people through those safety briefings that you give. And that builds inclusiveness on your team. And it makes safety and security everybody's responsibility instead of one sole person. Rule number 3, don't hit anybody. Conflict that is not confronted right in the beginning is conflict that is unresolved. Leaders have to be ready to address conflict. They have to use tools that leaders use when they see conflict. Regardless of the magnitude of the problem, it might be small, it might be big, you still have to intervene or have the tools to intervene to resolve those conflicts. You have to understand relationship building. You have to have empathy. You have to exhibit a caring attitude towards individuals in order for them to grow. Every single time you have people on your boat, they have an opportunity to grow with the team, with the boat, and with our sport. You do not want this to be a negative impact, specifically if there's an emergency. Because if you do not confront conflict early, in the midst of an emergency is not going to be the time to confront the conflict. Rule number 4, my favorite of all the rules. Look good doing it. That's right. All your other rules, rule 1, keep people in the boat. Rule 2, keep water out of the boat. Rule 3, all right, don't hit anybody. But rule 4, look good doing it. You know, it goes beyond wearing a hat, it goes beyond wearing a jacket or a t-shirt for team belonging. And you have to remember, everybody wants to belong to a good team. Everybody wants to have a group identity as that, hey, we're the team that does this or does that, whatever. But the strong teams are the teams that play together and the teams that work together. What's really important is the boat has to have an identity. And that comes through leadership. Not only does the leader have an identity, but that has to extend onto the boat. Working in unison is really important. Win or lose, if you win by 100 feet, and you lose by, 10,000 feet, the boat demeanor should really be the same. It is the job of the skipper, the job of the captain, to continually work on that boat harmony, working things together, that everybody feels the same, equals on the boat, that a single individual doesn't win or lose a race. It's always going to be a team effort. A single individual doesn't get the boat from point A to point B. It is a complete team effort. The only heroes is the boat. It's that boat attitude. It's that boat mentality. It's one team, one boat, one identity. Crew overboard scenarios, COBs, they must include simulated exercises, whether it's a person in the water, whether it's a weighted object in the water that emulates a person's weight, pulling them out of the water and placing them on the boat. That is the definition of a crew overboard exercise. These driver's exercises or boat maneuverability exercises where somebody throws a floaty device off and then the boat drives around to pick those up, that's a driver's exercise. In no way, in no form, or in any fashion does that count for a crew overboard a recovery. The body weight of a human being getting on board a vessel and pulling them out from a leverage point which is below, so the body's here, the water line, and the person is here. This does not happen. It doesn't happen easily. As a matter of fact, it'll take 3 to 4 persons to pull the person up to that level. So practice is really important. On a weighted object, simulated, a crew overboard scenario, a simulation, must include pulling the person out of the water when they have a PFD and can help themselves. But even most importantly and more critically, how do you get a person on the vessel when the person, number two, left-handed two, number two, when the person can't help themselves? Understand every tool on your vessel, how to use that to pull those people out of the water. That's true crew overboard training.